Something remarkable is quietly unfolding on the women's tennis tour right now, and most people are completely sleeping on it. Not the casual fans, not the mainstream sports media, and honestly, not even some of the players who should be paying the closest attention. But if you've been watching the data, tracking the movement, and actually studying what's been happening over the last 2 months, you already know that a shift is coming. And it's not gradual. It's not polite. It's the kind of shift that makes you look back later and say, I watched that happen in real time. Today, we're talking about Alexandra Eala. We're talking about a 19-year-old from the Philippines who just came off one of the most quietly devastating stretches of tennis any young player has put together in recent memory. And we're talking about what happens when you take a player like that, drop her onto a surface she was literally born to play on, and put her in a room full of people who desperately want her to lose. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open is turning 35 this year. That's a tournament with history, tradition, and a deeply loyal fan base. But this edition is doing something nobody expected. They pulled out the hard courts. All of them. Brought in 100 tons of red clay and essentially rebuilt the playing surface from the ground up inside a design center in the middle of the city. It's dramatic. It's bold. And it sets the stage for exactly the kind of match we need to talk about. Because stepping onto that clay as the 6th seed is Alexandra Eala, and standing across the net from her is 29-year-old Julia Grabher, an Austrian playing in her own backyard, in front of her own crowd, on a surface she's been grinding on for months specifically to prepare for this moment. On paper, you might read that and think, tricky match for the young Filipino. Hostile crowd, experienced opponent, high-pressure environment. That's the story the casual viewer expects. But when you actually sit down and break this apart, when you look at what Eala has been doing and where she comes from, the story looks completely different. Let's start with the momentum because it matters more than people give it credit for. 2 months ago, Eala walked into the Sunshine Double, Indian Wells and Miami back-to-back, 2 of the most competitive hardcourt tournaments outside of the Grand Slams. These draws are stacked with top 20 players, veterans who've seen every situation imaginable, and they eat young players alive. Eala didn't survive those draws. She dominated in them. Back-to-back round of 16 finishes. She wasn't scraping through on luck or riding a weak section of the bracket. She was actively outplaying established women's tennis professionals and doing it with a consistency that made people take notice. That kind of run changes something in a player. Not just the ranking points, not just the visibility. Something internal shifts. You stop playing to survive and you start playing to win, and there's a massive difference between those two things. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Everything Eala just proved on hardcourt? That's not even her best surface. Hard courts are her visiting card. Clay is her home. She spent years at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, which is not a marketing phrase or a nice line for a Wikipedia page. That place is a laboratory for clay court tennis. The footwork patterns they drill into you, the way they teach you to construct a point from 15 feet behind the baseline, the specific kind of patience and aggression they develop in their players, it's unlike anything else in the sport. The greatest clay court player who ever lived built that academy, and Eala absorbed that knowledge during some of the most formative years of her development. When she steps onto that surface in Linz, she's not adapting to a new challenge. She's coming home. Now, let's talk about Julia Grabher, because this isn't a dismissal of what she brings to the match. It would be too easy and too lazy to just wave her off, and that's not what we do here. Grabher is 29. She's navigated the brutal middle tier of professional tennis for years. She reached a career-high ranking of 54 in the world back in 2023, and she currently sits around 87. Those numbers tell you she belongs. She knows how to compete. She knows how to grind through difficult matches on difficult days. And she's done the preparation, spending time on the clay in Turkey at WTA 125 events in the weeks leading up to this tournament. She has not sleepwalked into this draw. She is locked in. And the crowd she's going to have behind her is not a minor factor. Playing in front of a home crowd in professional tennis is unlike almost anything else in individual sport. Every error you make gets applauded. Every winner your opponent hits lands in a kind of hostile silence from the stands. The entire emotional atmosphere is calibrated against you. For younger players especially, the combination of crowd noise, pressure moments, and a veteran opponent who knows exactly how to slow the game down and disrupt rhythm. That combination has ended careers early. Grabher understands this.
She's going to lean on it.
Her game plan is clear. Extend every rally, throw up heavy defensive balls, absorb whatever pace Eala generates, and wait. Wait for the crowd to get loud enough that it starts to creep into Eala's head. Wait for the errors to come. Wait for the moment the pressure becomes too much. It's a smart plan. Against most 19-year-olds, it would probably work. But here's the problem with that plan when it meets Alexandra Eala's forehand on clay. Eala's ball, particularly off that left-handed forehand, is not something you can just push back into the middle of the court and hope for the best. The topspin she generates is heavy in a way that the numbers don't fully capture until you see it in person. When that ball bounces on a clay court, it kicks up sharply, it pushes the returner back, and suddenly you're not playing tennis from behind the baseline. You're playing tennis from another area code. Grabher is a disciplined defender. But disciplined defense requires you to actually be in position to defend. Eala's ball is going to consistently take that position away from her. She'll be pushed 4 meters behind the baseline on ball after ball, running laterally, trying to neutralize pace that just keeps coming. And the moment she floats something short, and it will happen because it always does against this kind of pressure, Eala steps inside the baseline and puts it away. Clean and simple. That's not a guess. That's what happens when a heavy topspin baseline game goes up against a defensive player who doesn't have the firepower to redirect the point in her favor. The crowd is going to start this match electric. Austrian flags, loud chants, everything a home crowd can offer. But there's a specific moment in a tennis match when a crowd stops pushing their player and starts hoping instead. It's subtle. You can feel it through the screen if you know what to look for. The energy shifts from belief to desperation. We think that shift happens in Linz within the first 5 or 6 games, as Grabher realizes she can't find a way to neutralize what's coming at her. Watching that crowd go quiet while Eala is mid-match is going to be one of the most telling images of this entire clay season. Now, let's zoom out for a second, because this match isn't happening in isolation. It's happening inside a 28-player draw. And Eala enters that draw seeded 6th, which means she has a real, legitimate path to the final. But that path runs directly through one of the most unpredictable and genuinely dangerous players on the entire tour. If Eala gets through Grabher, the likely second-round opponent is Jelena Ostapenko, the 4th seed, former French Open champion. A player who hits the ball so flat and so hard that she breaks rallies before they develop. A player who can produce a winner from almost any position on the court when the ball is sitting in her strike zone. Ostapenko is a different kind of test entirely. She doesn't grind you down. She detonates on you. And you cannot play tentative, survival mode tennis against her and expect to come out standing. You have to bring full aggression from the jump or she will overwhelm you before you've had a chance to settle. So the subtext of the Grabher match, the reason it matters beyond just round 1, is about how Eala wins. Not just if she wins, how. Does she come out sharp and dictate from the start? Does she get pulled into a long, draining grind that takes physical and mental energy she'll need later in the week? The manner of this victory is going to tell us a lot about where Eala's head is at entering the clay season. If she handles Grabher efficiently, crisply, and without getting emotionally drawn into the crowd dynamics, then what she can do to Ostapenko in round 2 becomes a genuinely fascinating question. And that conversation, Eala versus a former slam champion on clay with momentum behind her, is the kind of moment that gets referenced later. The kind of match people point to when they're explaining how a career changed direction. Alexandra Eala is not a story about potential anymore. That chapter is over. The results in the United States, the ranking movement, the way she competed against players who had every experience advantage over her, all of it signals that the transition has happened. She is no longer a talented teenager with a ceiling people are curious about. She is a present-tense force in women's tennis, and she is about to play on the surface, where she has always been most dangerous. Julia Grabher will bring everything she has. The crowd will be deafening. The pressure will be real. And none of it is going to be enough. Eala wins this in straight sets. She controls the tempo from the opening game. She handles the crowd noise the way players who've been genuinely prepared for high-pressure moments always handle it, by focusing so completely on the task in front of them that the external noise simply stops registering. She advances. She sets up what could be the most watchable match of the entire first week of the clay swing. And the European red clay season announces itself in exactly the way it should, with a generational talent putting the rest of the tour on notice that the surface has changed, the stakes have risen, and the era of waiting is finished.